Okay, we'll be finishing now. The book of Revelation, chapter 14, but we have to know where we are in the book of Revelation. And that goes by, as you know by now, what subject John has you in. Because in Revelation 7:9, John said, after these things, and clearly we entered those saints that will come out of the tribulation. Those that go into the tribulation, those that get saved in the tribulation, and those that are harvested in the tribulation. And we are also still, it has not changed. Most people would not see that. We're still in the two signs. We're in this subject of those saints in the tribulation that come out of the tribulation, but we're also in these two signs, the sign of the woman that was about to give birth and the sign of the red dragon, the sign of the church and the sign of Satan. And then we come to chapter 14. In fact, chapter 14 has to do with the harvesting, the harvest. And in Revelation 14, 1 through 5, we saw clearly, it declared they were the first fruits. That's the pre-tribulation rapture, those ready, waiting, watching, their lamps are lit. They don't love the world or the things of the world. And that was the first fruits. And then we saw immediately after that, the three angels with the three messages that the saints, the church of Laodicea that goes into the tribulation, and that those who get saved during the tribulation will be preaching, declaring, teaching those three messages of those three angels. And now we come to Revelation 14:14. And I looked, and behold. So John looks again, and behold, and remember, we're in these two signs. So John looks again and beholds. He goes, wow, look what I see. I looked and behold, a white cloud, and sitting on the cloud was one like a son of man. A lot of people don't understand this here. They say, is this Jesus? Is this an angel? Why one like the Son of Man? It says like the Son of Man, the same reason that so much was said in the trumpets, in the fifth and sixth trumpets, everything was like, because it was Satan trying to bring a substitute. But here we're in these two signs, and we're in the sign of the woman giving birth, the harvest of the earth, those that are coming out of the church and being harvested. And so that's why it says, I looked and behold a white cloud, and sitting on the cloud was one like a son of man, because we're in this sign. We're in this sign of the woman, and it's not a clear picture. John didn't clearly see an angel or a temple or an altar. He sees one like the Son of Man, because we're in these signs. And that's why it says one like a son of man, having a golden crown on his head and a sharp sickle in his hand. And another angel. There's a lot of angels in chapter 14. And as we've said, as we've seen, angels are bringing the church, they're bringing us, they're bringing you a message from God. In the book of Revelations, that's what we see here. So now we see another angel came out of the temple, crying out with a loud voice to him who sat on the cloud, put in your sickle and reap, because the hour to reap has come, because the harvest of the earth is ripe. So we have the Lord here in this sign. That's why it says one like the Son of the Man. So this has to do with the harvesting of the saints. We already had the pre-tribulation rapture, the first fruits, as we saw, verses 1 through 5. So now this is the sign of the Lord harvesting the saints, the harvest of the saints throughout the tribulation period. And we know that the first fruits are already taken. But now, what do we have here? We have also what we saw in Revelation 12, 5 and 6 concerning that woman. And she gave birth to a son, a male child, who is to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up to God and to his throne. And listen, saints, and the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had a place prepared by God, so that there she might be nourished for 3.5 years. We also saw this same thing in Revelation 12:14. And the 2 wings of the great eagle were given to the woman in order that she might fly into the wilderness to her place where she was nourished for 3.5 years from the presence of the serpent. So the church that doesn't get raptured in the pre-tribulation rapture is safe, is protected. She's nourished. And what we see here in this harvest of the Lord sitting on this white cloud with his sharp sickle is the harvesting throughout the rest of the tribulation of the saints. And in verse 16, and he who sat on the cloud swung his sickle over the earth, and the earth was reaped. And another angel came. So now we have another angel, another message, something else to see. Out of the temple, which is in heaven. And he also had a sharp sickle. And another angel, the one who has power over fire, came out from the altar. And he called with a loud voice to him who had the sharp sickle. So this angel comes, another angel. We have the Lord with his harvest of the earth. That's the harvesting, the saints coming out of that woman who went into the wilderness and is nourished for 3.5 years. Now you have this other angel come with a sharp sickle, and another angel comes out and said to that second one with a loud voice, saying to him with a sharp sickle, put in your sickle, your sharp sickle, and gather the clusters from the vine of the earth, because her grapes are ripe. And listen what it says here, saints. And the angel, the second angel, swung his sickle to the earth and gathered the clusters from the vine of the earth and threw them into the great winepress of the wrath of God. This is the harvesting of the grapes of wrath. We had the first fruits rapture. We have the Lord here in this sign, one like the Son of Man, harvesting the saints. But now you have this other angel in this harvest of the grapes of wrath. And we're going to see more. I'm not going to go too much into this now because we're clearly going to see all these things played out. Right now we're in this sign. But later we're going to see it played out. Not in a sign, but actually played out. And in verse 20, and the winepress was trodden outside of the city, and blood came out from the winepress up to the horses' bridles for a distance, up to the horses' bridles for a distance of 200 miles. Now again, this is the coming of the battle of Armageddon. And this is the grapes of wrath that will be harvested when those nations, those people come against, at that point, at the end of the tribulation, the church that's in Israel, the congregation, the saints in Israel. They will be trying to wipe out them, the last of them. And we will return with the Lord, and he will put an end to these armies. This is the harvest of the grapes of wrath, or those that are destroying the Israeli people and coming against them. And again here, saints, we got to see something else. We get this silly teachings from those on the broad road to destruction that didn't enter the small gate and didn't go down the narrow way. And they tell you that these armies will come together for the battle of Armageddon. And enough blood will be shed as the Lord returns that it will be up to a horse's bridle. That's 4.5 feet. That the blood will be 4.5 feet deep. That's silly, saints. That's crazy. They haven't seen the revelation because they didn't enter the small door. If you've ever seen battle scenes, or if you've been in war, or if you've seen these documentaries like on the Nazis, they used to put the Jewish people in holes they would dig, deep holes. hundreds of them, and just stand up there with soldiers with machine guns shooting them, hundreds of them, and they'd just be falling down. The blood would quickly go into the ground. The blood wouldn't even come up over the people. It couldn't. It's only blood that's in the people. How could it rise up and cover the people? And those on the broad road to destruction want to tell you that blood will be shed through that whole big valley, a gigantic, massive valley for 4.5 feet deep. Come on, saints, that's silly. That don't make no sense. So what does this mean? What this means is that at that battle of Armageddon, when the Lord returns and slays those armies, there'll be enough bloodshed that if it was coming out of a normal wine press in those days, where it comes out of the wine press, through the trough out of the wine press, that would be 4.5 feet high, that trough that the wine would pour out of, 4.5 feet wide, whatever width it would be, and would go for 200 miles. That's how much blood will be shed. Not some silly story that these armies are going to come together. They're going to be slain all at once, and the blood's going to be this deep. It's impossible. You'd have to have people stacked miles high to shed that much blood up to the mountains. It's not true. It's not what it is. That's the amount of blood that would be shed. That if it was being poured into a wine press, coming out of the trough of the wine press, if that thing was 4.5 feet high, it would go for 200 miles. That is what that's talking about. And so now we're done with chapter 14 and the harvest to come. The first fruits is those ready, watching, waiting. It's the token of the harvest to come. And then you had the rest of the saints that go into the tribulation and get saved in the tribulation, preaching those 3 messages. Then in chapter 14, verse 14, you start and see the harvest. The Lord there on that cloud with that sharp sickle, it's just representing all those that will be harvested, all those who will die or be raptured throughout the tribulation. And then you have the harvest of the great Serath. That's those that are coming after Israel, that are going down there to fight Israel, to wipe the Israeli people off the earth. But the Lord will return with us, and we're going to see that later. But next message, next time, we enter chapter 15, and that's a glorious revelation to be had there, saints. Don't miss the next message. It's very critical. It's something that people don't see again, and you're going to have a wonderful revelation of the Son of the living God.